Master Chief Miles O'Brien woke slowly in the wrecked schoolroom. The alien invaders had vanished. Whether alive or dead, he did not know.
Cisco. O'Brien. Chief, we thought you were dead. My comm badge was destroyed. Had to use a corridor touch plate. Sir, I have an idea. Let me put together a civilian militia. I think we might be able to hold them using the phaser grenades. Hurry then. Cisco out.
O'Brien raced along Crossover Tunnel 2 to the Habitat Ring. He rounded up a ragtag force, arming them with as many O'Brien Specials phaser grenades as he could put together. Crossover Tunnel 2 had a strong airlock door that he partially shut. It was the most defensible spot in the vicinity. Just as O'Brien lined up his militia, the invaders discovered the tunnel and advanced toward the Habitat Ring.
We've got to defend this point. If they get past here, we've lost the whole damn station.
The invaders advanced inexorably, laying down a murderous barrage of bullets that ground up the militia as easily as Odo's security team. O'Brien's ears rang from the cacophony of gunshots in the echoing battleground. O'Brien's militia held their ground until the last phaser grenade. After a few moments, the invaders charged against the useless phaser beams, and the few remaining militia members surrendered. O'Brien watched in horror as the invaders began to shoot the survivors, not even bothering to question them. The crushing emotional wave O'Brien had suppressed since Keiko's death burst free. He held out one last O'Brien special. Silently, he extracted it. A small clump of invaders had gathered about their officer in command.
You murdering bastards!
O'Brien pressed the arm button. In his anger, he forgot to reset it from the default 0 seconds. The O'Brien special exploded instantly.
The time has come, Quark, to make a few preliminary deductions. Justice is our primary duty now. Cops, you're all alike. How about saving justice until after we search for survivors? Survivors? I haven't seen any, Quark. How about you? How can there not be survivors? The invaders are gone, obviously driven off. Somebody would have found a hole to hide in, and if anybody did, it would be Nog, and maybe Jake. Huh. The naive first-cut deduction. It fails by inspection. There are no survivors, or we would have seen them by now. The logical deduction is that the invaders killed everyone before they left.
Odo waited for the Ferengi to object, but Quark remained silent.
First, killing the station personnel was clearly secondary, not the primary goal. It looks pretty primary to me. Think, Quark. If the invaders meant to simply kill everyone and not take over the station, why not just blow it up with their ship, then escape back through the wormhole? Maybe they did want the station. Then where are they? They obviously won. Clearly there's no command personnel left, or they would have sent a distress call and summoned a starship here. There is only one logical answer. They came here looking for something and proceeded to conduct a very thorough, room-by-room search of Deep Space Nine. Now, don't leave me in suspense. Did they find it? We don't know yet. My guess is no, or they would have left before killing everyone. They did leave before killing everyone. We're still alive. We were in a static time field. No. They killed everyone they found, but did not find what they wanted, despite a thorough search. So either it wasn't here, or it was very well hidden.
Odo's eyes narrowed at exactly the same time Quark's widened.
No, you can't pin this on me, too. Really? It makes perfect sense, Quark. What better place to hide something than inside a static time field? Let's see it, Quark.
After a long pause, Quark removed the invader belt buckle from an inside pocket of his jacket.
Yes, of course. Your Lonat villain doubtless stole this from the Gamma Quadrant, and its rightful owners followed him to DS9 to demand it back.
No, that's ridiculous. That can't be right.
Oh? And why not?
Because if aliens had popped through the wormhole and demanded a stolen Dwoozle widget, don't you think O'Brien would have remembered scanning that box? Your assassins would have just waited around 3 days until we reappeared, then taken it back.
You're right, much as it pains me to admit it. Not looking for some item then, and certainly not for treasure since they left your Latinum. That leaves only one choice. They came looking for a person. Somebody in particular here on the station.
Great. That narrows it down. A brilliantly concise deduction.
We have another piece of evidence you overlooked, Constable Quark.
Yes?
They searched the entire station and killed all but we two. Either they were wildly misinformed, or the person they wanted was one of us.
Commander Sisko still sat at the tractor beam controls, the batter's box as he called it, though the invader had not made a move in some time. Dax sat at her console, rubbing her temples and thinking through the evidence.
All right. Somehow, Quark obtains a sealed box containing an unknown device from the Gamma Quadrant. Odo has O'Brien scan it. They head back to Quark's place. Then they disappear. A day later, the invaders show up looking for somebody, the other one like them. They insist we're holding him. This can't be a coincidence, Benjamin.
Not likely. What did Quark and Odo find?
My guess? I would say that whatever the device was, it included some sort of subspace transponder belonging to the other one.
Yes. Yes, old man, that's it. That device put out a subspace signal that said, "Here I am." No wonder they don't believe us when we say we don't have him. The physical evidence says we do.
Great. Now what?
Old man, do you think that you can make those phaser grenades the O'Brien specials?
Probably. Why? Wait, don't tell me. I don't think I want to hear this.
Sorry, Dax. It's our only chance. O'Brien's irregulars held out as long as they had O'Brien's specials. You've got to take more to the remaining civilians.
You mean down in the war zone?
In the meantime, I have some serious thinking ahead. If this doesn't work, if we can't hold them,
then what?
Don't ask, old man. You don't want to hear it.
An hour later, Dax skulked through the habitat ring, carrying a bag of O'Brien's specials and trying to look in every direction simultaneously. Suddenly, a memory tickled the back of her brain. Something about replicating phasers. The replicators could not replicate a charged phaser because they could not actually create energy. All they could do was rearrange molecules. The only way they could create energy of a sort was to create chemicals that could then interact like... Dax slapped her comm badge so hard she almost knocked it off her shirt.
Like gunpowder! Benjamin, I've got it! We can't replicate phasers, but we can replicate an arsenal of gunpowder firearms.
Dax, you're a genius.
I keep telling you that.
Sisko patched her tricorder into the computer using her comlink, and she downloaded full specifications of the most powerful firearm she could find, the Klingon window pane, to a data clip.
Good luck, old man. Toast an invader for me.
Jadzia Dax sprinted down the corridor, passed through a closed and sealed airlock, and found the nearest replicator. She felt a presence loom behind her before she got even halfway. Her spots flushed a deep reddish brown. She turned slowly. It stood in the doorway, still as stone, hand-sized firearm pointed at her face. Chills marched along her spine as she heard her death sentence.
Where is the other one like us?
She slid a step closer to the replicator, readying the data clip in her fingers.
I can figure it out, but I need more information. How did you find out the other one was here?
Her questions threw its rhythm off. She took another step. Almost there.
We received the signal.
Nailed it, she thought.
Is the signal produced by a device? We might locate the other one by finding the signaling device.
Dax took the final 2 sideways steps. Now, she thought, how to jam in the data clip and replicate a window pane before it blows my head off.
Yes, where is the device?
Our chief engineer had it. Then it was in Quark's place, the large building on the promenade where you first beamed. Let me lead you. We'll find this device together, friend. But I'm very hungry. I can't think unless I make some food.
Did you see this device?
Yes. Do you mind if I obtain some food from this replicator?
What does the device look like?
It's, the size of my hand with a hand grip, smooth, like your helmet.
Dax knew instantly she had said one thing too many. The device was smooth like your helmet. Ding! Wrong guess, Lieutenant, but thank you for playing.
I'm sorry, my mind must be going. I meant to say it was rough.
The Inquisitor calmly raised his hand firearm. Dax whirled to the replicator, jammed in the data clip. She heard a gunshot behind her, and the replicator control pad exploded into a wreckage of metal, plastiglass, and bright blue electrical discharge. She turned back to face the invader, knowing she had lost her gamble.
I prefer it in the front.
She smiled, strangely peaceful at death. The explosion filled her ears, echoed like a deep rumble of the fusion reactors. Dax rocked back, balanced on her heels for an eternity. Then she slowly collapsed into a delicious, foggy shroud. Blackness, she thought. I should see blackness. Instead, every color of the prism swirled around her vision, red predominating, ruby, damask, vermilion, deepening unto the infrared. The last stretched on like life, never quite ending, until the wavelength was infinite, energy approaching zero, but never quite arriving. A tiny fluctuation remained, a whisper of coherent frequency. A piece of Dax remained, felt the lifeless body surrounding her. Merciful Mother, thought Dax. Not Jadzia or Curzon, just Dax. Jadzia's brain is dead, but I am still alive in her chest and still connected. But can I still move this body? The host Jadzia brain was dead, but except for the broken arm, the rest of her body worked. The Trill implant Dax, the worm, was still alive. The undamaged arm lifted jerkily. The eyelids fluttered open, and Dax could see blurrily. The Inquisitor had turned its back, was leaving through the smashed door. Dax raised Jadzia's right arm, a phaser grenade clutched tight. Dax made the thumb press the 1 for 1 second, then press arm. It flung the grenade like a catapult. The Inquisitor was blown forward against the inner bulkhead by the force of the explosion. It did not get up again. Apparently, they were somewhat inadequately armored from behind. Jadzia's eyesight dimmed as even the automatic functions began to shut down. The infrared deepened, the frequency dropping. The wavelength approached infinity asymptotically as the frequency dropped to 0. I did it, was Dax's last thought, though it no longer remembered what, exactly, it had done. Quark walked past a door knocked off its hinges. Then he stopped, face turning distinctly yellowish.
What's wrong, Quark?
Did you glance inside that room?
No.
You should.
Odo stared at Quark. The Ferengi was acting odd, even for a Ferengi. Puzzled, the constable retraced his steps, glanced inside.
I'm afraid you weren't hallucinating, Quark. It is she.
Jadzia Dax sat on the floor, leaning back against the outer bulkhead, with an enigmatic smile. The enticing spots along her neck, normally dark brown, were now bone white. One large bullet hole marred the perfect beauty of her lovely face, in her forehead, directly above her eyes. She looked as if she had carefully sat against the wall to die. But that was absurd. The forehead center shot would have pierced her brain to the stem, killing her instantly. The Ferengi crouched low to look one last time at her perfect face. He was startled by an exclamation from the normally implacable Odo.
I was right.
Lying against the inner bulkhead was the dead body of an invader. Quark stared back at Dax, understanding her cryptic, serene smile. Jadzia Dax had figured how to kill an invader.
Quark, I think I know this race.
Odo tugged, pulled the black bubble off of the creature's head. Inside was a vaguely reptilian face covered by soft, springy, cactus-like spines. The eyes were huge and perfectly circular.
Who are they?
Quark remained as far away from the invader's body as he could.
They have no name. They are the most secretive race known.
What do you mean they don't have a name?
I mean they don't tell anyone who they are. They don't make treaties, trade agreements, or friends. The Cardassians call them Bekir, after a Cardassian animal similar to an earth badger or a Ferengi digfish. The Bekir are extreme xenophobes, despising all other races. Nobody knows anything about them.
Well, I guess we know something now. We know they can come tens of thousands of light years to attack a deep space trading station.
That is curious, Quark. According to Cardassian law, there are only two ways to provoke an attack by Bekir: to attempt to find out their home system, or to hold one of them captive.
Odo and Quark simultaneously looked at each other, immediately grasping the obvious. Odo spoke first.
So, some kind of signal made them think a Bekir was being held on DS9. Now, I wonder what that something could be. Eh, Quark?
Without warning, Odo turned his arm into flexible, snake-like appendages that whipped out, coiled around the Ferengi, and dragged him closer. Quark struggled and squawked, trying to keep far away from the Bekir body. As Odo dragged Quark closer, a device on the Bekir's wrist glowed brightly.
Spill it, Quark. Drop your little toy into my hand. Now!
Quark cringed and handed over the device using the dead rat grip. Odo pulled the Bekir's arm from underneath its body, held the device up to a wristband. The band flared bright red. First step, thought Major Kira, is to get a gun that even the invaders have to respect. Her years in the Shakar served her well. Kira hid an event, then ambushed the first unlucky lone invader who happened by. She knocked it to the ground and stuck one of Dax's phaser grenades beneath it, stunning the bubblehead. Before it could recover, she hijacked its rifle and ammunition and vanished. She spent some time rounding up as many children as she could find, as many as she could find who were still alive. She picked up a pair of Bajoran pilots along the way. Major Kira Nerys held up her hand. Behind her, the column of children and a few adults stopped, frightened. She checked the time. 27:15. 15 hours since the invasion had begun. She put her finger to her lips and pointed forward, past the intersection. The 12 children scuttled past the occupied corridor. Alas, one of the two Bajoran runabout pilots Kira had rounded up slipped, her shoes making a loud squeak on the polished deck. The invaders turned at the sound. Kira caught the first one with a dead center shot in its chest, using the captured rifle. The bullet cracked through the armor as if it were papier-mâché, apparently killing the occupant instantly. The moment it fell, it flared brilliant red. Kira turned her face away. When she looked back, the invader body had vanished, leaving behind nothing but its heat-twisted armor. Strange, she thought. The bullets didn't do that to us. Kira Nerys crouched low with her rifle, just peeking around the corner. Her invader counterpart dropped to its belly and began plinking at her. Rather than waste ammunition on an impossible shot, Kira ventured 10 meters down the corridor, then hovered, hugging the bulkhead and aiming low. When the invader cautiously eased its bubble head around the corner, she fired 2 rounds into its face. The invader convulsed, then fell still. A second later, it too melted into a bubbly goo. Kira nodded, finally understanding. It was a security mechanism designed to prevent the invader bodies from falling into enemy hands. Move out, kids, now! The invaders grew more technologically innovative by the hour. They had extended their signal-damping field so that ops could not even beam people to a pad on the runabout. Instead, they had to hoof it right through the combat zone. It was a rescue fraught with peril. She contacted Commander Sisko. "Sir, you've got to distract them when we launch, or they'll just shoot down the runabout."
I can fire a full barrage of torpedoes. Warn me just before you launch. Get the kids out if you can. But we both know I must stop this invasion, even if it means destroying Deep Space Nine. Sisko out.
They cut through what seemed like kilometers of corridors, avoiding invaders when they could, fighting when forced. At last, they stood directly below the runabout service bay. The lift was inoperative, but a ladder led up. Kira went up the ladder first, followed by the pilot with the squeaky shoe, the parade of children, and the backup pilot. They had almost reached the service bay when a single shot exploded beneath them. The backup pilot dropped heavily, dead before he struck the deck. Kira swore angrily, leaned way off the ladder, dangling by one foot and hand. The position left her utterly vulnerable while the kids crawled past. She could not aim and fire the invader gun with one hand. She could, however, fire from the hip. Kira blindly fired a steady drumbeat of shots down the ladderway. Above her, the last of the children cleared the hatch into the service bay. Major Kira Nerys climbed into the service bay behind them and lay on her stomach, peering down into the gloom. She waited, heart pounding, breath ragged. The kids dashed across the bay to the runabout, opened the door, and piled in. Their silent, pinched faces looked back at Kira. She shook her head. A tear wet her cheek. "Bye, luck." Kira turned her attention back to the ladderway. A bubblehead moved cautiously into the light. This time, Kira could use both hands. She aimed, fired, and its helmet shattered in an explosion of black blood and prickly flesh. It fell heavily, flared brilliant red, and turned into a slag heap. Something flew up at Kira, hitting her in the nose. She blinked with surprise. It was a black cylinder, as wide and thick as her fist, made of some sort of metal. Before even consciously realizing what it was, she kicked it back down the hatch and threw herself to the side. The cylinder exploded violently, knocking her off her knees. She scrambled up, saw another black cylinder incoming. The force caught her full in the face and upper body, flinging her back away from the hatch into the service bay. Stunned, Kira rolled back and forth, trying feebly to get off her back and onto her knees again. The runabout was just clearing the deck between the service bay and the launch pad, rotating to face outward. She watched it as it passed through the launch pad, fired impulse engines again, and disappeared behind the lip of the deck hatch. "Launching. Have to tell Sisko it's launching." Gasping, she rolled to her knees just as the first black bubblehead popped up the hatch. She crouched, rifle pointed at the hatch, waiting either to fire a round or stick another grenade.
I could do this the rest of my life, you bastards.
The runabout Orinoco launched from Deep Space Nine, streaked away from the station. The invader ship's sensor array tracked the small craft, launched a single missile. The shot sheared away the runabout's starboard impulse engine, causing the pilot to lose control. For an instant, she appeared to regain her course. Then she turned inexplicably, headed directly back toward the launch bay. Closer, closer. 2 more grenades popped up the hatch. Out of the corner of her eye, Major Kira saw one roll just a few meters away, and she braced for impact. She blinked, found herself across the service bay upside down against a bulkhead. She saw another grenade explode silently, felt the buffet, but did not hear anything. Prophets, I'm deaf. She looked down past her right foot. The roof of the service bay had been blown apart, leaving a clear view up to the launching pad, thence through the terminal to space itself. Were it not for the pad force shield, Kira and the rest of the launching bay contents would be blown out into space. Major Kira rolled upright and tried to stand, but collapsed instantly. Looking down, she saw that her left leg was gone. A wave of dizziness overcame her. She let her head sink back, looking up at the stars. She saw a tiny pinpoint of light through the peeled-back ceiling, like a bright star moving erratically across the sky. Dax was suddenly beside her. Where had she come from? The Trill knelt beside Kira, stroked her hair with phantom hands, telling her to hang on. Dax suddenly turned into Kira's mother as the bright spark grew brighter, larger. Abruptly, Kira realized that the light was really a Bajoran torch ship docking at the launching pad, come to take her home to Mother. Mother patted her hand, but she was still Dax. Kira Nerys smiled. The prophets had come, riding a hot runabout. They settled. She saw them loom large, larger. The Orinoco slammed directly into the runabout launching bay at several hundred meters per second, crushing Kira beneath tons of metal and leaving no remains to be found. Odo stood, looked across the room past the wrecked runabout. Near the service bay door, a strangely wrapped bundle caught his attention. He strolled closer to visually examine it.
Quark, come here and look at this.
At the shapeshifter's feet lay the body of a child. It was laid out straight, covered with an emergency blanket from a med kit.
So? It's another body. It's not Nog, is it? No, but Quark, I didn't cover it, and neither did you. The Bakir would never undertake such funerary concerns for another species. The only rational conclusion, Quark, is that we are not alone on Deep Space Nine.
Quark and Odo continued their trek, but found no other dead invaders. They did, however, discover more and more bodies that had been carefully covered. The phantom survivor was evidently either Federation or Bajoran. No one else would have bothered covering the dead. The infirmary door was wedged shut. It took the two of them all the strength they had to pull it open enough to enter. Dr. Bashir was quite dead, sitting on a stool, back propped up by his own desk. A circular bullet hole graced his forehead between his eyes. The wound had bled copiously, caking Bashir's face. Behind him, a personal medical log input screen flashed off and on. Recording, await input. Recording, await input. Odo leaned over. Replay log. Quark and Odo stared, grotesquely fascinated, as the agitated image of Bashir appeared on the screen. For a minute and a half, Dr. Bashir tersely recorded his medical log entry detailing the casualties from the Gamma invasion. The med lab door slid open. Outside, Bashir saw two soldiers dressed in armor with black bubble helmets covering their heads.
May I help you?
This is the medical lab.
Yes?
The two invaders entered the lab. When Julian saw their rifles, he realized who and what they were.
What you want?
Where is the other one like us?
Bashir was about to answer that he did not know when a sudden premonition that it was the wrong thing to say stopped him.
Would he have been brought here?
The other was distressed and may have been injured. An injured captain would be taken here.
Yes, if he were injured, he would be taken here. Would he have still been wearing the armor?
The armor may have been removed upon capture. The other wore a signaling device.
Bashir strained to think of something else to ask, to establish a dialogue and perhaps save his life.
A device? What did it look like?
The invader flexed its hand, held up a peculiar device for the doctor to see. Superficially, it resembled nothing so much as a huge, ornate belt buckle.
So you believe the other one is here because you received a signal from that device, yes?
Yes.
A voice signal? Did you talk to the other one?
The signal is automatic when activated.
Then you don't actually know that the other one was ever here. What if somebody else got a hold of this device and activated it somehow?
This will be known soon.
Why? How can you tell who activated the device?
We will stay until the other one reappears.
Quark shrank as small as he could manage, wishing he had Odo's ability to turn into a chair or potted plant. The device the Bekir held up was identical to the one Quark had activated in his office. It was obvious what happened. Quark himself was the somebody else who had accidentally signaled the Bekir. Odo froze the log playback and stared pensively at the screen.
A signal, Quark. It must be a distress signal that summons the nearest Bekir rescue unit. But what did it mean until the other one reappears?
Oh no, something's been gnawing at my ears for hours now, and I just figured out what it is. When when the device activated, what did you say happened to us?
The static time field. We were frozen for 3 days with no passage of internal time.
But think about it, Odo. What would that look like from the outside?
I would assume it would look like a perfect mirror, or perhaps a solid black sphere.
Wouldn't that be rather noticeable?
One would think so.
Of course it would. If nobody noticed your absence, I'm sure the disappearance of the most prominent Ferengi citizen of Deep Space Nine would cause a frantic search, beginning in Quark's place. What would you think if somebody went missing and in his office you found a huge, impenetrable, mirrored or black globe?
I concede I would think there might be some connection.
Ha! You tested with every known sensor you had. My office would have looked like ops. Did you see any equipment in there?
Well...
And what about the Bekir? Surely they know what it looks like. Why didn't we pop back into the real world surrounded by a platoon of the spiny creeps? It makes no logical sense, Odo. We could not possibly have been in a time stasis field.
Odo traced the logic from beginning to end, sure there was a flaw. Quark, the logician? It was absurd. But he found no hole.
But that means that instead of being frozen in time for 3 days, we actually jumped forward 3 days. Some sort of quantum... well, you know.
Exactly, Odo. And that must be what the Bekir meant. He meant they would wait until we reappeared 3 days after activating the distress signal.
Odo took over. Even the shape-changer felt a strange dread, looking from the frozen image of Bashir trying to save himself to Bashir lying dead, having clearly failed.
Which leaves a curious puzzle, Quark. Where are they? You activate the device. Don't think I haven't deduced that much, Quark. Sending a distress signal to the Bakir while simultaneously catapulting us 3 days into the future. The Bakir receive the signal, presume it is one of their own people taken captive. They follow the signal through the wormhole to Deep Space Nine. Quark, don't you see what's wrong with this construction? If they know we're not going to reappear for 3 days, then why bother asking where the other one is?
Unless the Bakir sometimes reappear early, Odo.
Quark, you've got it. There must be some way of returning through time to arrive somewhat before the 3 days have elapsed. Resume playback.
Bashir had played the game well, but in the end, it was like Sir Arthur Eddington's rewriting of Newton's 3 laws of mechanics. You can't win, you can't break even, and you can't even quit the game. As was inevitable, the Inquisitor eventually tired of 20 questions and shot the good doctor.
Terminate playback.
Odo copied the log entry onto a data clip, tucked it into his pocket.
Evidence. This is still an investigation.